Hello guys, welcome back. I hope that we're up and running now. So I hope you had a good week. It's still Wednesday, but here it's already 4:30 p.m. So we're past like 60-70% of the week. So I hope you had a good day today. This is actually my first time running on YouTube, so that's kind of a special day for me. I hope I have everything set up correctly. As far as I checked, it should be fine. It's actually it's been quite some time since I last streamed, so if there is any glitch in the stream, please excuse that. And I do still have these elements here from Twitch, so I guess I will have to redo that a bit. And also, there's one other thing that I would have to change, and that is I actually created a new logo for myself. I'm building a completely new profile site. I'm building completely new profile logos and arts and all those things. If you've seen my YouTube channel, you've seen this new channel art. So that's something I've been working on for quite some time. So I hope you like it. If you do. Then make also sure to check out my Twitter. It's twitter.com/underbus. Whenever there is something interesting worth sharing, I'm always putting it there. So take a look. Otherwise, the theme for today is Flexbox, the CSS Flexbox. Now I know that a lot of developers or people in the web development in general, they always see the CSS things or generally, coding HTML and trying to work out the right CSS styles. It's sometimes seen as something really easy to do, something that you could do in an hour for the whole website, the responsive website, everything. But when you actually get to it, it's not as easy as it looks. Or at least that's my experience. So if you do have the same experience, let me know. I will try to watch the chat. I don't have it here in OBS, so I'll try to do some switching to the browser. If you have the same experience, let me know. But my experience is that whenever I need to code something in CSS and do the respective HTML structure, it usually takes me at least a day or two, because you have to solve all these little differences, when you build something in Chrome, then you check it in Firefox, then you check it in Opera, then the worst thing, you check it in Edge, and all the elements are positioned differently and so on. So that's kind of a dreadful task most of the time. But what I thought could be useful is to do a bit of a reference list of the most common layouts. Because whenever I need to code a site, whenever I need to, style something, most of the cases, it's the same thing all over again. It's, some elements that are related to each other. Sometimes they can have a longer text or bigger images, but they have to respect some kind of design guidelines. So I thought about creating a reference list where you could always go in and, see how the specific elements could be positioned and how to achieve that using Flexbox. So that's what I want to do today. At least I want to start with this today. And what you see here on my screen is actually let me drag this around. So this is Figma. If you don't know Figma, it's a great piece of software or online service that lets you design your website without actually designing it. So or without actually doing any CSS. So in the past, whenever I needed to see or I wanted to see some design, I would always just put in the HTML, I would code some CSS and see how it all looks like. Figma actually does exactly that, but does it 10 times faster. So you can just drag items around, position them nicely, try different fonts and so on, without actually touching the CSS and any kind of HTML, which is great. Because then you see right away that it doesn't make sense to play around with this text shadow or the little things that can save a lot of time. So that's what I did here. I created the 4 use cases. First use case is to have 2 elements that have some kind of a gap between them, but otherwise they are positioned in the center of the page. So the white rectangle actually represents the visible portion of the page by the browser. And these items should be positioned in the center. They have different texts, so different sizes of the text areas, and they have two CTA buttons with some headlines and so on. So they are positioned, with relation to each other. So if the headline, or if the element number 2, that's the orange one, needs to be a bit longer, the first element, the blue one, has to be longer too. So the CTA buttons should be at the same position. The second one is to have something completely centered. I always stumble upon this use case when I need to create a landing page or a page that only says like, hey, we know that there should be content here, but we're still working on it. So that kind of page. So at that point, you wanna position that important message right in the center of the visible portion of the page. So that's another use case. Another use case that I'm stumbling upon quite often is to have cards. So you see there are 8 cards. They respect the same kind of layout as the first sample, but sometimes you need 4 cards, sometimes you need 3 cards, and of course their content also varies. You see there is just 1 line, there are 4 lines, so they have to stay the same size, right? And the last one that I have here, I also had a 5th one, but I totally forgot which one that was before I had time to put it here. So I don't have a 5th one. But for the 4th one is variable height of columns. So that means, there are alternating images, but they are also of different sizes, only their width is the same. And the text on the other side has to respect the image. So it should always either, or both the image and the text should be positioned in the center. So you see that on the headline number 2, that the text is positioned in the center with relation to the image. But otherwise it should respect the kind of alternating structure from the left to right. And in the use case number 3, you see there is a lot of text here and not that high image. So then the image needs to be positioned in the middle. So that's kind of what I want to achieve. Today I want to start with the simplest one. So that's the centered element. We'll see how long that takes us, but I don't have any styles prepared for these blue boxes and CTAs and so on. So I'll probably have to handle that first. Yeah. So that's why I want to do only the simple use case today. Maybe I'll be quick and I'll finish more, but let's set up a goal for today to create this one. Yeah. Now, first, what I will do is actually have a Flexbox folder here. So this is a completely blank folder. And what I like to do all the time is just create assets folder. I always put here all the assets that I have for the website. The reason for that is that whenever I need to create, let's say, a Next.js site or a Gatsby site out of this, I would always take the assets folder and put it there. Just a copy paste. So that's why I always try to separate it like this. Then I'm always creating a CSS folder. And because I'm not used to writing the CSS directly, I'm also creating a Sass folder. So I'm always using Sass to do my styles. And let me actually copy a thing or two from a different project here. I'm going to talk about those in a second. Actually, from my personal side, I can show you that. So I'm just going to copy the main variables mixins and header, for example, so that we can do that. And we're going to go to Twitch and Sass folder. All right. Now I'm gonna open the Visual Studio Code here. Okay, here we go. So we have the Sass folder here. Oops, I did not actually want to do that. I wanted to go up here. Okay, let's close this thing. Okay, so we have an assets folder, CSS, Sass. Now the way how I run this is that I create the style sheet, the generated one. So I use the Sass files to generate the CSS. you see that there is a main file that actually imports all the nested files. So in my case, it's going to be variables. That's okay. I don't need fonts. I have make sense. I have header, and that's all. So this should be now valid. And all these files will generate a CSS file here in this folder. So what I usually do is open a PowerShell and run sass. So if you don't have sass installed, you can just install sass and run the same command. And first, it requires me to add the source file. So that's sass/main.sass. And then the output file. So that would be main.css. And I'll add a flag for watching. So it will actively watch. Oops. Did I make a mistake here? Couldn't find an option with a short name. W. Okay. Yeah, sorry. My mistake. There should be 2 dashes. There we go. So you see it's watching for changes. So I can just minimize this. And whenever I save some file here, it will automatically generate the CSS for me. Okay, let me fix the lighting here a bit so that you can see me. All right. So that's how I always start. Now let's go back to here and create here a new file, but not in this folder, but in the main folder. Let's call that index.html. Okay, let's put here some basic structure. Flexbox sample number 1. And we're gonna need some body here. Now, what I usually do as the first thing is I look at the design and try to come up with a meaningful HTML here. So in this case, it's probably gonna be the body. Then we're gonna have the main. Then we're gonna have div for the card, and then a headline number 1 as a heading of the first level. Then you have some text here, so let me just copy that over. I think the centered element is locked, so let me unlock this and let's copy the text. Okay, let's put it here. And the last thing would be the CTA button. So let's call that CTA number 1. Cool. So when we have it like that, I can go ahead here and open it in browser. So you see it doesn't look quite nice, but let's take a look at how we can style it. So let's take a look. This is a GT Wolsheim font. If you don't have that one, just use whatever font you do have. I think I do have this one installed. So I'm just going to go ahead here and create another file, or I usually call that content. That is used for pretty much everything that I have in here. So let's call that. So this one is like universal for the whole website. Yeah, let me just remove this. So body, font family will be GT Wolsheim. Okay, now I'm gonna save the main as well. That should trigger the regenerate, and we don't have the font here, so let's see what's going on here. Now let me just move, not this, let me move the dev tools here. I'm gonna actually put them, I'm gonna dock them here. Okay, so body, oops, not there. So font family is not there. Let's see why not. So we're looking at the main CSS. There's a lot of make sense. Here we have body, font family, GT Wolsheim. Let me see if I actually typed it correctly. I think I did. Oh, but yeah, I totally forgot to import the style, right? So we need to import style. So this is a style sheet. And ref will be assets/css/main CSS. So that will be the problem. Now you see this looks much better. So we need to import the styles, and now it's probably gonna be just a pure CSS kind of thing. So let me actually make this a bit bigger. Okay, I think this is better. I don't even need glasses at this point, but hopefully this is more visible for you guys. So let's see what we need here. So first of all, we need this blue box. So the blue box is 470 pixels wide, and the centered element is 1440. So this is pretty much 30% or 33% of the whole width. So let's say, let me remove header. We don't need that. Yes. So we're looking at this div. Okay, let's call that card. Let's call that card. And we can say dot card will be 33% wide. And let's edit some borders so that we can see how it looks like. Now, by the way, this is the best debugging technique of the CSS. I'm sure you've done that once or twice. Okay, so you see that this is 30%. Hopefully, the text was wrapped to the next line, so I assume that this is correct. And now let's take a look at some other things. So you see clearly that there is some kind of padding here. It looks like, so this is 372 and this is 470. So it's almost like 50 pixels. But when we make it a little bit bigger, maybe it looks quite nice. So let's maintain the 50 pixels. And let's make the background nice. So let's take a look at this fill. So this is a linear background. So let me see. Linear gradient generator. Let's use a generator. I've learned over time that this is the fastest way how you can generate the CSS gradient. So I think that in here we're at like 20% or 25% maybe with this code. So I'm gonna use this code. Okay, let's use 20%. And then we have this code at the other side. Okay, this looks quite good. But we don't want to that. Okay, we want it from the left top to the right bottom. So not a radial. So this is radial gradient. We want linear. And we want it to be, I thought like 90 plus 45 would be 135. So yeah, this is what I want. So I'm just gonna take this and copy that over to my project. And let's see how this looks like. Oops, semicolons. So Sans does not allow you to use semicolons. It's one of the benefits that you don't have to use them, so you can't use them at all. Okay, now this looks much better. The headline has a quite a big padding here, but we can fix that. So it's a bit too low from the top corner or top side of the element. So let me just fix that. So we can say that the h1 within .card would have 0, or I'm not sure if this is actually margin or padding. Margin or padding. So this is actually margin. It seems. Block start, block end, yeah. So margin top will be 0. Let's see how that looks like. Oh no, still nothing. But I don't even see that here. Let me refresh it. Let's take a look here. Okay, so sometimes it happens. I don't know what triggers that sometimes it does not really generate what I need in here. See that there's the card here, but I don't see card H1. Even though I saved it. We have content here. Okay, now we go. Now here we go. So now it looks much better. So let's say the headline should, or within card should have a white color. Okay, here we go. Now what I usually like to do is put these things, these color codes into variables, right? So we can do it here as well. So background will be blank, foreground will be black. But then you obviously, for this background, I obviously need a different color because the black is not as readable as I would like. And I think, so I'm just gonna keep it like that. And in this case, this one is 48. Now I don't like to use pixels at all. So I usually like to use EM as a size unit. So we're gonna use 3 EM because 1 EM is 16 pixels. So let's do font size 3. REM. So this means that it will always be just 3 EM. It will not take into account whatever sizing changes the parent elements did. So this will always be 3, regardless of what every other element does. So let's take a look. This looks quite nice, and it's a bit too bold. Yeah, I think this works well. So font weight. I think we could do like lighter. Yeah, that works too. So font weight will be lighter. And what else do we need? Okay, so we need it to be centered, and we also need to add the radius here. The radius is 20 pixels. So border radius 20 pixels. And H1 should be centered. Okay, this looks much better. Let's remove the red border here and make the same for the CTA button. Now the CTA button, let's give it a class as well. And let me see if there are any questions so far. Oh, Andre is here and Ryan's here. So hello guys, good to see you. Why use EM versus pixels? Yeah, the good thing about EMs, one of the questions here. So the good thing about EMs is that if you do use them, and when the user actually resizes the page here, the elements will resize as well. So the EMs always have a relation to the size of the page. If you use pixels, that wouldn't happen. So if you use pixels, the user can do whatever he or she wants, but it will stay the same. So that's the main reason. All right, now this text seems to be a bit too small, so let's fix that. Here we have 24 pixels. So 24 divided by 16 is 1.5. So we're looking at 1.5 REM. That would be the B. Okay, here we go. So P would be 1.5 rem. And let's take a look at the CTA. So for the CTA, we are looking at 240 and 50 pixels in height. So I would probably just leave the width, or we can actually leave it at 240. It looks quite nice. So let's fix it that way. Now we see that this is rounded from both sides, right? So we need a border radius, 25 pixels, so that it's nice and round. And the border will be 2 pixels solid white. I think this is 2 pixels. Yeah, it's 2 pixels inside. And I'm not sure if this actually has any shadow or something, but it doesn't seem so. So I think we're good. So let's take a look. Okay, looks nice, but the width and height are not respected. The reason for that is I need to assign this or display this as a block. Okay, now the text is completely different or wrongly positioned. So let's make this one fixed. So line height would be 50 pixels. And we're gonna align that one to center. And here we go. This looks nice. So the last thing I need to do is to fix the text size. So this is again 1.5 EM. And we also need to make it white. And without the underline. Nice. Now this is much better. Of course, there should be some kind of effect when I hover over the button. But let's leave that for later. I think this is quite good right now. And we have it styled, so it looks quite close to what I have in Figma. And now the important part. Right? How do I position it in the middle of the page using just the CSS? So the way we do it is we say that body will be display flex. So whenever you want to use Flexbox, it's always display flex what starts it. So if we do that, you see it's already changed. Now, why did that happen? So let's take a look at body. You see that body is currently stretched over the whole viewport. So so that's what we wanted, but main is not as big. Now, of course, whenever you use you don't use a reset.css, which is maybe a good thing to show you. So whenever you're starting with a new design, I usually use the reset CSS tool. What this does is it actually resets all the browser injected styles. So the browser is always trying to render the page in a readable sense. So it contains some kind of a default styles. Like H1 is a header, so it should have some kind of margin and padding, and should be bigger in terms of text size, right? Than the other text. So it contains a lot of like these predefined styles that it applies automatically. And the reset CSS is something that gets rid of that. So you can use that if you want. I didn't use it, and you see that already in the first example, I'm already getting some weird results. So the main is not stretched. And at this point, I'm not sure why. Let's take a look if it's stretched. Okay. So I do know why, because right now it's stretched from the bottom to top. That's because we didn't specify the flex direction. Now by default, the flex direction is from top to bottom. So the direction is column. And the elements, so whenever you add elements, they would be added from top to bottom. Now let me show you this page, CSS tricks. Let me actually put that in the chat window. This is a very good reference. So, oops, not what I wanted to do. Stop. So, if you need help with Flexbox, and I always land on this page. This is probably the best guide to Flexbox. And let's just wait for it to load all the images. Now here we go. So this is the flex direction, what I was talking about. So by default, it's column. So that's this direction. So this is also how my elements are now positioned. But that only applies to the main element, nothing else, right? Because the body is what has the display flex, and main is the first element. So it kind of fills the space of what it needs on in terms of width, and it stretches all the way down because that's the direction of the flex. But I don't care about that pretty much. The only thing I care about is that main occupies the whole size of the page. So let me fix that. And let's say that main will have width 100%. So you see now, body is stretched. It does have some little margin, it seems. Yeah, 8 pixels. This is again the default style by the browser. Yeah, I didn't specify any margin, so it has that by default. That quite makes sense, because if there are no styles, then you don't want to read text that is glued to the left end of your screen. You want to have some kind of space there. So that's exactly what the browser does. So that's good. The main is now stretched to the 100% of available space, which is also what I want. And the div card, I kind of doubt that this is 30%. It looks like much more. Okay, 33%. That still feels like it's a bit more. So Chrome tells me it's 728 pixels, and the whole main is, or the body is 1904. So let's count that. So 1904. So the element should be 634. So this is not 33% at all. But that might be, that's because I made one mistake here. Because if you specify the width this way, like I did, 33%, and then specify padding here of 50 pixels, that's actually added to the width. Yeah. So if you wanna have 33% including the padding, just like I do here, the only thing you need to do is to define the box sizing to be border box. Let's see if this makes it right. Yeah. So you see now it's 33%, 628 pixels, 634. Those would be the 8 pixels on the sides. So this is correct. So now we are at the third of the visible portion of the browser. Now what I want to do is, in the scope of main, I want to make the card. I want the card to be centered. Now, because main is stretched from top to bottom, I can center the div only in one axis. So let's take a look how to do that. So first of all, I need to say that main should have display flex as well. You see that made the card look pretty bad, but that's okay. We're gonna make a flex direction here to be row. And we have only one element below that. So the key thing here that we need to do is we need to first use one element, this one, to center all content in one axis, and then use the other element to do the same with the other axis. So first of all, it could be the X axis and then the Y axis, however you want to do it. But right now, what I want to do is somehow make it in the center. So I've made the car. Okay, so I made the main display flex. Now what I want to do is I want to align self center. So this will actually position only the main in relation to body. Yeah, it's not nothing's happening to card yet. It's only positioning main in relation to body. And because main is in the flex direction column, it's going from the top to bottom, then by aligning self to center, I'm saying that the space that is not needed should be distributed evenly. So you see that here. So we're flex direction column, so the main is in that direction. And let me find the align self. So this item, you see, it's aligning self the way I ask it to. So it could be flex start, or it could be flex end, or it could be center, just like I did. Yeah. Let's take a look. If I change this, if I do a flex end, it sits at the bottom of the screen. If I do flex start, it's at the top, right? So we want that to be center. So display flex and align self center. You can always do it one level up. If there are multiple items here that you want to be centered, you can always say align items here on the level of body, right? So you don't have to always use align self. You can always use align items here. So that kind of sets it for the whole group of elements. So let's take a look how we can do that. So we're looking at body, main, here. So align items, center. And the main should have also display flex. Now let's take a look how that changes. Okay, so that's pretty much what I want to achieve. Now, what I want to do is position the div class card. So you see it's positioned on the left side. And if I add here, align self center, it's not going to do anything. Why it's not going to do anything? Because the direction is not defined here. So first of all, I need to define the direction to be row. And let's see if we can make this. Okay, now we don't need to do this, but so this is align, so this is fine. Flex direction is row. Align center. Okay, so this is not working, but that's fine. Let's figure it out. Okay, no questions, so we have time to figure it out. So here we're saying that the elements should be in flex direction row. So we want the whole space occupied by just the one item, which is correct. Okay, let me see if the flex direction here is column. Okay, no, it isn't, it's row. Okay, so it's the other way around. So it's actually good practice to always define it here. So this should be row. And in that case, we are centering on the y-axis. So we have the flex direction row. And in that case, the main should have the different flex direction. So in this case, it should be column. Let's take a look. It will look exactly the same, right? Because nothing really changed. But right now, what we can do is we can say that div class card should align itself, not items, but align self to center, and it will be centered, right? The reason why that happens is that first of all, we defined that the main should be positioned in a row in relation to body. So what it actually did is it allocated the whole space for the one item, because there is just one item. So it allocated the whole place of of the visible portion of the web page for this one item, and the item can then decide whether it wants to be aligned at the top, at the bottom, or in the center. So we were effectively centering it on the y-axis. So that's what we did the first time. And the second time, we need to do the same thing, but on the other axis. So that's why I defined the flex direction to be column. So in the scope of the highlighted place here, or the highlighted main element, we can position the div class card any way we want, because this whole area is allocated for that element. So when I define here on body main that it should align items to the center, that's one possibility. Or I can use the same approach as before, align self-center on the card itself. So I'm going to do the first one again. So align items center, in case I want to add multiple cards here. And here we are. Now we also need to center the CTA element. It depends if here you want to use Flexbox as well. I tend to use it because then you don't have to mix multiple ways of laying out the page. So when I use Flexbox, I usually use it everywhere. So let me use it for the card as well here. So let's put it here. Display flex. But here we obviously want flex direction to be column, because all the items, so this is one element, this is second element, this is third element, all of those are in order from top to bottom. So that's what we want here. You see that there is some kind of margin here, but we can work with that. So when you use Flexbox, all of these items actually become blocks. So you don't have to specify it explicitly. See, this is block anyway. And when we look at how the elements are positioned, so this is the card, there is headline, there is text, and there is the CTA. So you see that the width and height are also respected. And the items are positioned in a standard way. So you see we're going, so this whole highlighted place is allocated for the headline, and the headline is actually stretched and uses the whole space. And it's centered because I defined text align center. The text here has some margins, and the link here is using only 244 pixels. That's because 240 pixels is the width and 2 pixels is the border on each side. So now let me fix that. So the CTA will want to align itself to the center. Okay, that's better. And we probably want a bit lower margin here on the headline. So the text is fine. So let's say that margin overall on the headline will be 0. So this looks much better. Cool. Now, what we can do is probably we can add some margin to the link here. It seems to be a bit crowded here. So let me do that. At least 10 pixels. Okay, now this looks quite nice. Now, what you will see is that as I resize, okay, let me make this one a bit bigger. So as we resize the page, this always stays in the middle. So that will be the first use case, I think. I don't see any any questions here. So if you have any questions, feel free to ping me. Otherwise, let's add some nice effect to the CTA button, because it drives me crazy that is not doing anything when I hover over it. So let me just add here a little effect. So background would be white and color would be black. So whenever you want to add a hover to a link or to an element here in Sass, then you can just nest it below it and just use the ampersand sign, and it will basically append it to the previous definition of an element. So let's take a look. Yeah, that looks much better. So it's finally doing something. Looks quite nice. All right, so that's the first use case. Let me actually do here a folder that says use case 1. I'm gonna copy everything there so that if I break something, I have a restore point. Now, what I want to do is try to do the other use case. So this is the first one, right? We still have this little thing here. I'm not sure if I have this font actually, but we can do that later. I don't want to mess with that right now. Let's do the second card first, then we can mess with these things. So the second card is the same as the previous one, but it's orange. So let's take a look at the colors. I hope I didn't close. Okay, here it is. So I didn't close the gradient generator. So this will be the first color. And here we have the second color. Cool. Now let's divide the colors actually. So card dot blue, or this would be the dot orange. So this will be the color orange, and we're gonna add dot blue, these two things. Otherwise, let's see how the white color actually looks on the orange background. I think this should be fine. So this will be card blue, and I'm gonna add here another card that will be orange. And obviously this one has a bit more texts on it, so I'm just gonna copy it over here. And let's see how it's gonna look like. So no changes. Okay, so the cards are positioned below each other. Otherwise the white looks quite fine, I think, but we want them to be positioned next to each other. So we're probably gonna need to add one additional element. The reason for that is we want the first centering. You see that they are still centered in the middle of the screen vertically. So if I make this one smaller, you see that they keep, being centered vertically, which is exactly what the main element does right now. And because we want them to be also centered horizontally, we need to add one additional element that would do so. Otherwise, we couldn't achieve that, right? Because the main element is already used for centering on the other axis. So let me add here another element. Let's call that row. And you see now it's a bit broken. That's because the row element does not have any styles defined yet, but I'm gonna fix that. So you see, this one is a display block by default by the browser. So we're gonna change that, and we're gonna make the row be a row. So let's go back here. We can actually take these two things to the top level because they don't need to be under, they're always going to be under body. Everything is always under body, right? So we don't have to worry about it. And let's say that this is going to be display flex. And by just specifying display flex, we should also get rid of this margin here. You see, it's no longer there. So it's not a block, it's a Flexbox now. And those two items are positioned correctly, just like that. But we first need to do one additional thing, and that is to make these two things centered. So you see that the whole space, the whole horizontal space is now not occupied by the cards themselves, but by the row element. Now what we need to do is, or we have actually multiple ways how to achieve this, but the easiest one is to actually specify that, of course, the flex direction should be row of the row. So you have the column here that defines that the whole available space will be for the row, and the row will have flex direction row. And we're going to say that the space should not be at the remaining space should not be at the end of the elements, but it should be spaced, from both sides the same way. So that's another way of centering the elements. The way how we can do it is by using the property justify content. If we do justify content center, that should do pretty much what we want. We could also say space evenly, which would distribute the space evenly between the elements. So let's take a look at how that would look like. So we're looking at row, and let's say justify content, or was that justify content? Yeah. So justify content center, and you see now that the space is on both sides, distributed evenly. We could also do around, space around, and you see that right now the space that's on the right corner is the same as on the left side, but in the middle we have double of that. That's because it's around every element. But if we do the space evenly, we will get something that's close to our example here. But depends on what you want to achieve, right? Sometimes this looks quite nice. Sometimes this is not exactly what you want to achieve. So what you can also do is say that row should justify content center. And we can always say that card will have margin 10 pixels. So this is the margin from top, this is the margin on sides. Now let's take a look. So you see the space between the items is much smaller, maybe too small at this point. So let's put here 25 so that we have in between 50 pixels. Now this looks much better. So we are pretty much there. So you see that this is not a 50 pixels, but it's definitely not the same as on the sides. And the only thing that's left for us to do here is to make sure that the CTAs are in the same position. So right now they are positioned a bit differently. So the thing that we can do is we can say for one of these elements that's in the card that it should fill the remaining space. So you see that here the remaining space is left without usage. So the H1 is here, the text is here, the also the link element is here, and there is just a unused space right here. So what we can do is we can say that the text should grow to fill the space, right? Now you see that the CTA buttons are in the same position. The headline is at the top, and regardless of how much text we can add here, Let's add some additional text here. If I can do that. You see, the CTA buttons are still in the same position. So it maintains the same height, and the CTA buttons are at the bottom, even if there is shorter text than on the right side. Wow, so that finishes the second example, I hope. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I don't see anything here, which is also a good sign, maybe. So that's the next use case. So we have two boxes next to each other. The text fills all the remaining space. Now at the end of this stream, let me just add here the little arrow, right? Now I don't want to add that in the HTML because this is a purely CSS thing. That's purely style thing. Now let me see if I actually have the text here. So just a very simple test here. Or let's actually do it the right way. So let's add the text after the CTA button. So here we are on the CTA. And what I actually want to do is use the pseudo element after. No, not 3, just 2. And this element should contain the right, sharp bracket, or however you want to call it. Oops, one extra space here, it seems. And let's say font family should be Chua. I don't think I have that font, but let's see. Okay, I don't. You see that the font is not there. But let's see. Maybe Google has that font. Oh, there we go. So if Google has the font that you need to use, it's actually really easy to get it into your website. So you just need to find the right style. And I think I'm using here just the regular style, right? So that's the 400. And when you want to add that to your website, just click on embed and use this link. So as simple as that. Let's go here and add here the link to the font and take a look. Perfect. So now we have the button there. The funny thing here, or a nice coincidence, is that the arrow actually has the same size as the text here. So this one is 24 pixels. This one is also 24 pixels. So we are fine. So let's now position it the right way. So we have it there for both buttons. So let's now position it the right way. So you see it behaves like a normal element. And because this one is a simple block, what we could do is we could either position it we could position it absolutely, which is probably not what we want, but we just want it to be stuck to the right side of the button. So let's try it, the absolute position. But I think that we don't want exactly that. Maybe if we define this as a position relative, that looks much better. And it shouldn't be right 0, but right 20 pixels, maybe a bit less, 15. Yeah, I think this looks quite nice. So let's try to do that. So CTA should have position relative. So position relative actually sets the coordinates 0, 0 to the left corner of its element, so that I can then use in the after, I can then say position absolute, and I can say right 15 pixels. and we should be good to go. Yeah, that looks quite nice. And is the same for both CTAs. So it's 50 pixels. It still seems like it's a bit too high. The reason for that is that we have the borders there. So maybe if we add one additional thing, that's again the box sizing, border box. So it's 50 pixels including the borders. You see now it's right in the center, so it's nicely in line with the CTA buttons. So let me add that here as well. Cool. Now this looks much better. All right. So I think that this is good for today. We've completed the 2 exercises. Wasn't that hard? So I'm gonna continue with this one in the next stream. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you wanna check that out. Next time I'll be looking at the same size cards and variable height columns. And once this is all finished, I'm gonna sum it up in an article and share all the codes, including the code pens, right? So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you had fun. Let me do one last check for questions. Okay, there are no questions here. So thanks for watching. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you next time. And until then, I can probably figure out how to stop the stream.